Let me just say something about that.
Yeah.
Because I think, decades of watching famous novelists and poets come and read at Cal Poly or back when I lived in Boston at BU, Boston College, in the audience, and it's not just the students, it's other people in the audience. The Q&A comes and they always want to ask the author, how is it you write? What's your method? What do you do? And of course, the author always says something like, well, I get up at 5 a.m. and I flagellate myself, and then I have a raw egg, and then I write from 8 to 11, then I do this. And, the people in the audience are thinking, now that's what I need to do.
Right.
If I do what he or she does, then I can be a pretty damn good writer too.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're getting at, because I've never believed in that. I think it's really hard to say, okay, at 9 o'clock every day, I'm going to sit down at my desk and I'm going to write.
Yeah.
And I just find it doesn't turn on, it doesn't turn off. And I don't know if all those writers I saw over the decades, if that's really true or what they want to believe, because I think, we have to tap into the unconscious. And what does Shelley say? It's like a breeze that blows across coals that are ready to go out, and then the coals glow again. But you don't know when that's going to happen. And I think I really like your idea that the way to nurture that to happen is the way you live your life. And that inculcates that happening, rather than this idea of this discipline where you're at this desk and I'm going to write 500 words a day, no matter what. I think that's an interesting place to be.
Yeah, and again, even in the question, there's that very, we would say, left-brained idea of process, right? What's the process? What's the step-by-step that I follow? Irony in this, in that I've created an app that does step-by-step for people.
Oh, that's right.
So that's maybe part of the tension for me.
Yeah.
All right, what's your name?
John Hampsey, Hampsey, English professor at Cal Poly.
Very good.
19th century British literature, classical Greece, and existentialism. And I got to know you because you sat in my intro to classical lit class, and you're a early to bed guy, but you did not miss a class for 10 weeks. It was 8 to 10 at night, twice a week.
Sure. And what question did I answer? If you're gonna brag about me.
Oh man, I think it was about a movie, wasn't it?
No, it was Karamazov, I think.
It was about Karamazov.
The first line
of
the brothers Karamazov.
Oh, really?
Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
You said, does anybody know what the first line is?
I think it was the first line of Tolstoy's.
Karenina. You're right.
Yeah, all happy families are alike, but unhappy families are each unhappy in their own way.
Yeah.
And then we met swimming together in the ocean. And ocean swimming, I think, is an interesting parallel to the process of creativity, because it's a process of feeling your power, feeling your confidence, and then also this humbling and this letting go. And this simultaneity of holding on and letting go is, I think, the nexus of the creative impulse. So I think we feel it when we swim. And we're talking about ocean swimming. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I also married you and your wife.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been friends for 10 years.
Mm-hmm. So if I was going to I thought about how to introduce you here. And this is probably my favorite story. For this purpose, which is we were playing tennis, and we were picking up, the balls that had gone over to the side, and we happened to be together over by the net, picking up balls. And this girl, certainly closer to my age than yours, I would say younger. I would say maybe a recent grad student. I add that just to add tension to the story. Is walking by on her cell phone, talking to somebody, and we're picking up balls.
I remember this.
And you say, "Hey, who are you talking to?" And she turns and stops and looks at you, says, "I'm talking to my boyfriend." You said, "Tell your boyfriend, you guys should come play tennis."
Go get your rackets or come play tennis.
Yeah. And she goes, yeah, okay, I will. And she was smiling. And so the joke has been that I'm going to write a book. Of course. And then they showed up. And then
they showed up and they played.
Yeah. And then if we're swimming in the ocean, and you notice that there are people out moored on a boat off the beach where they are away from everybody and certainly content on their own, you will swim up to their boat and you will say, hey, but
where the hell are goddamn Bloody Marys?
Yeah, or yell at them that it's the DEA and we're coming aboard.
We're coming aboard.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, and invariably they laugh, and we've had some. I hang back.
There
right?
was one guy one time on a boat that said he was going to throw chum into us to attract sharks. He was so mad at us.
Yeah.
And he looked kind of crazy.
Yeah.
A person formerly part of my life, no longer didn't like this side of me because she thought it was kind of arrogant. And I would say, well, I'm just trying to catch people in their kind of humdrum life and calling them to account for themselves in the moment and see what they do with it. And I think that's what's going on. I guess maybe it's a little bit arrogant on my part. What's my, what right do I have to yell at strangers and tell them to account for themselves? But it almost always works out, and they almost always like it. So in that sense, I'm kind of this imposing fake God that comes down and says, "Hey, what are you doing?
Right.
What are you doing in that boat? What are you doing walking by? Wake up, do something."
Yeah.
The Cal Poly Quarter started this week, and I had a large lecture class, the one you took.
Yeah.
And some students were coming in late. There's 125 students in there, and I can't take rolls, so I have them count off by number, so I know how many I have. So they go 1, 2, 3, all the way to 125. Everybody has a number, and I say, remember your name and your number. I'll use it, and then kids come in late. And so what I did on Tuesday is I said, hey, you, late, come on up here. You have to get a syllabus. And it's a huge room. And this kid came up, and I gave him the syllabus, and he turns, and he's facing a room of 125 people. I said, your number is 126. He said, okay, thanks. I said, no. You have to sing it out loud to the 125 students. He says, really? I said, yes. And the kid goes, I am number 126.
Yeah.
And I thought, how fantastic. I had no idea if that guy was an introvert, shy, he was going to cry, crumble, and he just rose to the moment. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about.
Absolutely,
And he went back to take his seat, and people were just in awe. They thought I had set the whole thing up.
Right. So you've created an opportunity for somebody to be something more than their, in this case, number in the classroom.
Good.
Right?
And it could have backfired.
Yeah.
It usually doesn't.
Right. Yeah, I remember when I was in there, somebody asked about Freudian slips, and you said, what would be a Freudian slip? And then this guy said, like if I called you my dad or something. And then you're like, okay, moving on.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, okay, all right. So the joke is that I'm going to write a memoir called Swimming with an Extrovert, a new take on harassment. I
like that.
Yeah, just this. I don't know, man. It doesn't happen. Nobody else does this.
Just for the record, I'm an extrovert.
Yeah.
Johnny is an introvert who can rise to the occasion, but introverts I know find it exhausting after they've done so. Is that correct?
Sure. Yeah, I need a break, but I like people. I like one-on-one. I like ideas. Yeah. I hang back when you swim up to the boat. I kind of hang back and just because.
Here we
you
go.
can
Here we
handle
go
it. I don't. Yeah, I don't need to be part of it. Like if I have something funny to say, I'll shout it. But I'm happy to hang back. It doesn't. I don't get as much energy from that as I do from something like this, like having a chat about something that I find interesting.
Something with an extrovert is a great title. So let me know if you do that.
Yeah, it'd be fun. Yeah, or maybe this is it right here. The other guy who comes to mind is Bill. As somebody who, Bill Fletcher, just a friend of yours who puts himself out there as a way of allowing other people to rise to the occasion or something like that in a totally different manner.
Yeah, he crashed a dinner party of mine last Saturday.
Okay.
He appeared around 9:30 wearing a grass skirt with no underwear, a banana-colored bright shirt, and a sequin jacket that was shedding sequins the whole time. And he demanded that we have a discussion around my dinner table that he had invaded about what's more important in life, holding on to moments or turning our human experience into stories. So it's stories versus moments. And he was arguing for moments. Almost everybody else was arguing for stories. And we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
How we want to look back and we turn it into a story because it's kind of the process of our myth-making of our past self that we kind of rebuild the altar of all the time. And so, well, you just told stories. I just told a story.
Yeah.
It's a way for us to account and make sense of, the kind of chaos we live in by shaping it a story.
Yeah.
The problem with me is I kind of live for making the stories.
Hey.
And I'll almost sacrifice anything along the way to make the story good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm a bit like that. I think of practical jokes in that manner. I'm like, how long is this person going to be mad at me? 2 weeks? It's worth it. A month? Probably still worth it.
But the moment, but the moment is important too. I mean, you have young kids. You know how hard it is to hold on.
Yeah.
To moments.
Yeah.
you know, it doesn't have to be with kids, but your wife, my girlfriend, that doesn't matter. We have moments that we want to just freeze dry this moment, and we can't. And I forget, there's an old Irish writer who says, the most obvious thing that we can see to do in life is to hold on to great moments. But it's also the most impossible thing to do. It's obvious, and yet we can't quite do it. We try and we can't. And all the sadness of life results from our failure to do so. But you know, it's Irish because it brings in the word sadness. But
yeah, the Zen Buddhists would agree, as far as I have gotten reading them. Okay, so this ties into your lifestyle a little bit, though. If I may, on a, you know, average Tuesday or Thursday or Saturday, you might go out to dinner with some friends. Your girlfriend might be with you. You guys might go back to your place, maybe, you know, put on a fire or hot tub.
Frottage?
Put on some John Coltrane dance, you know, like music quite loud. So like, I don't think I don't know, certainly not me in the, you know, the business world that I'm in now, and also having the kids to bed on time every day and that kind of thing. And I wonder if that's as normal.
I don't think it's normal.
As it used to be, yeah.
Last night we were eating sushi on my balcony overlooking the neighborhood, and all the houses were dark, and it was 11:30, 12 o'clock, and we're eating sushi. That's our dinner time, and I'm blasting Dave Mason's first album from 1969 or 1968. And Amanda kept saying, you should turn it down, but it was just so gorgeous, the music and the sushi and sitting there in this nice glass of Pinot, but I'm sure, well, the neighbors are all in bed, but it was a spectacle. I don't mean to cause a spectacle, but I'm just kind of diving into essence that's there waiting for us. Yeah. And I don't know, I get like wistful about this kind of stuff because, you know, there's a genuine part of me that's like, shit, man, why can't I do that? Why? You can do it.
Yeah, I can, but it's
harder when you have kids and family. I mean, yeah, where I am is easier to do it, I think.
Yeah. Now, that said, we do...
I wouldn't have done that if I had a daughter sleeping downstairs.
Right.
I have to have the house alone with Amanda, and I can do that stuff.
I worry, though, you know, like more... So I'm thinking on my end, I started watching a show, you know, a week or two ago. And of course, you know, watch 3 episodes a week or something, right? An episode, you know, laying in bed. I don't have to do that. I could be out in the backyard, you know, I could be exercising, I could be walking the neighborhood, looking at the moon, climbing Bishop's Peak, right? So I have chosen instead to, like, it's such a safe, sick little world of like, okay, I'll just consume somebody else's imagination. I will eat that, and that will, I don't know, nourish the part of me that might otherwise.
Interesting metaphor. But I just like, you know, people talk about let's binge this show, and I always thought that was a strange metaphor.
That's perfect
because well, it's like you can't eat art. You know, I mean, to me, the whole idea of binging. It's a messed up way of thinking. You watch episode after episode, and I don't think there's any art going on or receiving of art or seeing of art. It's just this, it's moved into a different channeling. Can we?
You're filling an empty hole in yourself.
Can we chew on paintings? Can we chew on Beethoven's music? I mean, I don't know.
That's why I think it's such a perfect word, though, because I think you're filling an empty hole with the show.
I don't know how I feel about that metaphor, but you're talking about instead of consuming that, you could be in some other moment doing something else.
And I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to be the old person saying I worry, you know, that there's a spontaneous negation that you know sets up. You get where I'm going with that. I don't know. This guy Ian McGilchrist, who I happen to be reading. So this is what's on my mind, you know, talks about the issues that happen when the left brain, the, you know, procedural, precise, you know, kind of thing hunting brain is in control, as opposed to the right brain, which is the context, you know, humor, feeling kind of brain. And
is that the same on everybody, even left-handed people?
I'm not going to answer that. Left-handed women have the most unique brain, which happens to be what my wife is, but or the most unusual configuration up there. But it's not my expertise. So I'm not going to get into it. Right. So and even this world of, like, I do a lot on video conference, right? And there's something missing, and that's become very acute to me in the past 3 years. And we have remote employees now, and it's like,
oh man,
yeah, there's just something that, like, it's like you're not really living, right? The person who I work the closest with every day, like, we goof off, we're doing exercises, we're cracking jokes.
You can't do this. What we're doing right now if we were Zooming each other.
Right, and people do, but I don't know what, is it there's different people would say, the pheromones we can't smell each other,
right.
That there's something deep there, the magnetic fields.
Here's what I think, and then when I taught on Zoom for 2 years and really couldn't stand it, when the class would end, and I was always telling my students, peace and health, and they would, of course they were COVID, housed up in their parents' house or something for a year and a third. And I could see them in all the little bedrooms, wherever they were. And when the class ended, it just felt sad to me, not to get back to the word sad again, but I could see them going off into their closed off, lonely little lives where they weren't going out or weren't doing anything. And even though the class could have gone really well, I still felt this wistfulness afterwards. I don't feel that in the classroom. When the class ends, they're up, I'm up. Afterwards, we've all shared something and we're taking something away. And I don't know if that's ever going to be the same, doing it online or Zooming or conferencing.
Somebody said only connect. I don't remember who it was. It was some great writer.
It was a Canadian writer, I think, Johnny.
No, Northrop Frye or somebody?
Yeah, somebody like that, yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I like that a lot. Because I'm kind of, I can fall too easily into the, procedural and, let's get this done, let's be efficient, and then you just kind of miss, there's nice element.
Well, you got more on your shoulders. You got 2 kids, a family, a company you're trying to run, people you're trying to
is that more reason or less reason to
Well, I think it's more reason to rely on the processing side of the brain to make your way through.
Yeah, well,
I don't have a company to run. I don't have a family raising. My daughter's on her own, so I can go my way more. You were going to talk about creativity.
I was. All right, I have a question for you then. Creativity, there's 2 ideas. One is that it comes from, at worst they would say it comes from madness, right? Somebody wrote a book called Touched by Fire that was well received by some and discarded by others, just to say that there's an element of madness. You've got Van Gogh with the ear off, and Blake, and all these troubled geniuses. And then somebody that I thought was clever tied it to rumination, said, rumination and creativity are kind of the same thing. Like, you're like, I don't know what to do, and I gotta shut down and process and, think.
I love the word rumination. Go ahead.
Yeah. And then there's another side of it. There's a really good psychologist named Csikszentmihalyi, which I'll mispronounce, but he wrote a book called Creativity. He wrote a book called Flow. And his version of it was to say, like, nah, that's kind of hogwash. These people are stoked. He interviewed a huge number of Nobel laureates and other highly creative, productive people, and he's like, they can't wait for the weekend because they're going to have uninterrupted hours in the lab at the desk, doing their thing. What's your take on...
Well, I'm thinking of a couple of things. How interesting is I really like rumination, and we have to allow rumination in our lives. When I teach the Romantics, Wordsworth used to say, you get turned on by something, spontaneous overflow, you go back and recollect it in tranquility and write it down. And I realized when you get to Keats, who I think is the greatest lyrical poet in the history of English literature, he found out he couldn't write like Wordsworth. He couldn't have this spontaneous overflow, go back, make a cup of tea and write it down. That he had to steep, and he had to ruminate. And his great odes were only composed, that great year of his, after a long process of rumination. And I don't know if we allow ourselves to do that. I mean, could you imagine somebody walks in the room, I don't know, your wife, your mother, your kid, what are you doing, Dad? Or what are you doing, Johnny? Leave me alone, I'm ruminating. I mean, we just don't, we wouldn't say that, but we are ruminating. And I think that's the only way we can allow the layers to fall away so we can get into our unconscious. Because one thing I believe really strongly, we've talked about this before, there is no creativity without communicating with the unconscious. And it's not manageable. Oftentimes it doesn't call on our command. It doesn't allow us in when we want to go in. It doesn't speak to us when we want the unconscious to speak to us. We have to find a way. And sometimes rumination is the only way to allow that communication, because I think the source of all, and this isn't my idea, I think it was really Coleridge's, this volcanoes erupting inside us, and it's a dangerous place to go. There's impulses and dreams and desires and the id, unmanaged by the superego, but we have to find a way. And in my writing, I think when it's at its best, I feel I haven't written what somebody's just talking about. I was back east with Amanda at my brother's cottage, and I came out on the porch one night, and she was reading a segment from Soda Lake, my recent book, near the end. And I asked what she was reading, and it's a manuscript version of it. And I said, let me look at that for a second. I realized I hadn't read the second to the last chapter for 2 years since I wrote it. And I swear, as I was reading it, I thought, I didn't write this. Who wrote this? Where is this man?
Yeah.
That's how alien it felt. I mean, I liked it. And I thought two things. I didn't write this. This is really good. And also, I could never write this again. But I think that there's something else, some other presence in us that writes our really good stuff. And we're just these secretaries, we're moving the Ouija board or something.
Yeah, that's fairly Greek, isn't it? The muse?
Yeah, and the muse, that's interesting. How much is the muse? I mean, they thought of the muse as this daughter of inspiration, these daughters of Zeus that came to visit you.
Yeah.
And part of that was connected to giving it validity. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to read some shit you wrote, but if you tell me, the muses inspired me, then okay, I'll pay attention to it. Just like the Bible, God wrote it, well, then I'll pay attention to it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking more of, they said muse, but I'm thinking more of the visitations we get from the inner self, the inner self is so much wiser and so much more powerful. We're just in awe and mystery of it. We dare not try and understand it. But all of my best writing, all of my best teaching, all my best moments, all my best conversations are always somehow allowing that subconscious to bubble to the surface.
Yeah. That's why I like this format, because I think you catch people off guard and you force reality into it by not having it be too prepared.
Right. Yeah, we haven't prepared at all, really.
Why do this? Like, some of these TV shows are really good, John. Like, they're really well written. They really snap together. Afterward, you really feel like something cool happened. So why do the uncertain? Tapping the unconscious, ruminating, risking the dark side, and why?
I know. I don't really have probably a satisfying answer for the audience, because I think you're trying to put it in rational terms. What's the end goal for that?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a teleological endeavor. I think so many things we do, and we talked about this before, process, there's, teleological is the Greek word for things having an end or purpose. I need to be making $150,000 a year, or I want to be at this position, or I want to climb this mountain, or done this, or had 3 kids by this point, or you see end goals. When you go the other direction into ruminating and the unconscious and writing and creativity, I know it sounds a little cliche, but it isn't an end goal. It's the process and the journey, and it doesn't necessarily equate to, well, I feel good, I consumed that was good, I understand that. My book I wrote some time ago, Paranoia and Contentment, talks about the difference between those who live for contentment and those who live for this kind of dangerous creative journey. And I don't think we have terms to describe, if we make that dangerous creative journey, what your end goal is, because it's not teleological. It's Plato's word, it's deontological. It's just moving into being for the process of being without a goal in mind. And that's really hard for some people, because I feel like they always have to package it, sell it, understand it. Here's the ending, here's the moral, here's what it means, here's what I did, here's what I consumed.
The way that I have thought about that before is that, good art great art, creativity is on the edge of that it's pushing at the deontological, if I'm using it correctly, because an artist is in tune, with, the unconscious, the collective unconscious, the mystical, whatever.
Yeah.
And they're taking it and putting it through a medium and somehow like getting us a little bit closer. You think of the I shouldn't talk about painting because I don't know enough about it, but Cubism and postmodernism and when they were playing with just the way that light works, like all the different haystacks, painted.
Well, isn't that the difference between, if you decide to write a book, are you writing with an audience in mind, readers in mind, understanding this is going to get published for this reason, and I'm kind of writing it for this, publishing for this reader, versus just writing it to write it.
Yeah.
And I think the true artist, the true writer, doesn't really care about that end goal.
Right.
My first two books, Coppins Hill and Paranoid Contentment, I kind of knew they were going to get published. I knew Paranoid Contentment was a fresh take on the history of Western thought.
Yeah. And
I knew I was going to get a good university press. Coppins Hill was a fresh take on a boyhood memoir because it was focusing more on the time period rather than the story of me. I knew that. But then this recent book, I know you want to talk about some point today, the book I've worked on for the last 10 years and finished 2 years ago, Soda Lake. I don't know if I'm going to find a publisher. They love the writing and they love what I'm doing in it, but it's really challenging and it's really postmodern and it doesn't resolve things. And I have to be okay with that because I didn't write it thinking this is going to be great when it's published. This was a different book. This is kind of a vision book, and I have to be okay with putting in all those thousands of hours writing this book that I knew early on was probably unpublishable. Not to compare myself with Joyce, maybe that's how he felt when he was writing Ulysses. And you can't ever regret that, or you shouldn't get in that rumination flow, because I don't regret, even if the book doesn't get published because it's so challenging, I don't regret it because that journey was so worth it. Even though it's the only one of my books I really don't understand. I need to talk to my daughter or other people who have read parts of it or all of it. The fact that I've written a book that I don't quite understand gets us back to the unconscious took over a lot in that book. And so it didn't really let me in on understanding it, and that's okay. I think there's a place for works that you write or paint or draw or compose that you yourself don't understand, and maybe other people will in some way, right?
Yeah. Is that a necessary, so I have a few questions. One, there was a teleological push there to get us to talking about Soda Lake, so just point that out. Two, does it have to get us somewhere in the long run? Because then we're even making the deontological teleological,
right,
in a way, because we're saying, oh no, that everything has to be deontological before it's teleological. So we're pushing there. Or is it ever okay? Is it ever okay for the thing just to be in and of itself and not be part of any?
This is interesting because we didn't. I don't know where I'm looking for the source here. But we didn't really prepare a lot. We kind of knew you wanted to talk about my recent book and a couple other things you wanted to talk about. But I think we've already found the kind of core that we're revolving around here today. And I think it gets back to where you were 15 minutes ago. And you consume a show for 3 episodes. You're thinking, could I have been out at midnight walking or doing this, doing that? I think that's a lot of the TV shows we consume. They don't really tell us anything new about human nature. And I think that's what we want. I mean, when I read a book, I want it to change me. When I finish that book, I'm a different person. And Soda Lake that may be unpublishable, it's all about these moments and these visionary moments and things happening in an image or a scene. And I think you won't forget that scene, but I don't think you get that comfortable sense I understood what I just read.
Tell me about Garage Wall Man.
I have to take a sip of coffee for that. Well, that's a pretty good. That's pretty. I think that gets to exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, which is what I want to do, and I knew I wanted to ask you that because you're exactly right. That's stuck in my head, and it's not leaving. And there are several other moments in the book that are stuck in my head and not leaving. And so I want to.
Well, just so the audience knows, Soda Lake is a kind of mix of autobiography and fantasy and existential mystery. And I didn't really know where it was going. And Johnny's referring to chapter 2 called The Garage Wall Man. And it literally is me going outside. I have this, I guess, bad habit of smoking a cigarette or two and having a brandy or two before bed. It's kind of a ritual. And I go out to dump my ashtray in the garbage can at the side of my house, and I see this dark, long shape. And I find out later it's just some lumber that I foolishly left touching the garage, which you didn't. That's how you get termites into the house. But in this moment, I imagine it was a figure, it was a man. And that's that glitch. So real, me, going outside, brandy, ashtray, looking at this dark shape that's all real. And then I allow it to happen, like yelling at the people on the boat. It's not a dark shape, it's not a piece of wood, it's a man. And he's lounging there. And he's not a homeless person, he's well shaven. And what is he doing there? And we begin to talk. And the chapter is really 3 conversations between me, and I'm very Socratic. And the whole time I'm feeling guilt. Should I let him sleep in my garage? Should I bring him food? Should I take him into my house? Who is he? He never gets a name. He's the garage wall man. And in the end of the chapter, when I finally go out the last time, he's gone. But in the penultimate meeting with him, he tells a story. And I don't remember ever making this story up. I didn't make it up. I didn't see it. I didn't create it. This dude is just talking. And he's a figure that I've allowed to come, concretely into existence. And he starts talking about the only person he ever loved in his life, this man named McQuaid. And that they were together, and McQuaid had to leave and go back to Ireland, and he's lost him. And I say to him, I'll find McQuaid for you. And talk about synapse, that's where the book takes off, because I actually get a sabbatical, go to Ireland to look for this man McQuaid, who's not real. He's something a character who's not real talks about. So you have levels of unreality, but I go to Ireland, literally on a sabbatical, Cal Poly paying for it, planes and travel, and I go over Donegal asking for, do you know a man named McQuaid? And wherever that takes me becomes the center of the book, and McQuaid becomes this figure. Without the garage wall man, I don't get to McQuaid, but I didn't make any of that up. It just...
what I
you can explain that to me. I'd be very happy.
What I liked about the garage wall man was at first you were very much calling him to account. You were like, hey, what are you doing? And then he kind of piqued your interest, and then you were coming out because you wanted to learn more from him.
Yes.
Because I'll bring him a brandy too. We'll sit down and have a chat. I want to get to know him. I also want to point out for anybody who listens to this, you're not talking about the book, you're talking about real life, that you actually took a sabbatical and went to Ireland. This isn't just the book.
To look for McQuaid. And I remember when the dean interviewed me, he said, wait a minute, you're a sabbatical, you want us to pay and fund you and plane flight and everything to go across Donegal to look for a man who isn't real? And I said, exactly. And he said, that's fucking beautiful, man. But even when that happened, I didn't know where that was going, but the McQuaid chapter is about me going to find McQuaid, who's not real. And I think that the glitch is I'm really glad you brought up the garage wall man, because the odd thing about him, he's not a homeless dude. He's well shaven. He looks like he gets enough to eat. What is he doing sleeping there next to my garage? And what is his history? And of course, he's not really real, is he? Or maybe he is. And then when he talks about McQuaid, and I go to find McQuaid really in real life, McQuaid becomes more and more real until... when I get to this chapter in the book, he actually takes over the book and starts controlling things. And, is it a split personality thing? Is he the shadow on this wall right now? McQuaid ends up being kind of an ancient god back before Yahweh and Yeshua. And it's not that I'm discovering some lost god. It's that, and this gets back to our last podcast, is, when we imagine gods, we're really just taking pieces of ourselves and extrapolating them into some being. And when we communicate with them, we're actually communicating with ourselves. Gods are really just projections. And so McQuaid is an ancient kind of jester, iconic, quizzical god-like figure. But he's really sui generis. He came out of my mind, even though I didn't consciously create him. And he doesn't go away. I started a new book a few months ago, and he's narrating half of the new book, so he's not done talking,
Yeah. Briefly, my take on all this, if it's getting too trippy for anybody, I would just, what are our brains made up of? How did they come to be shaped this way so that we're so good at language, we're good at interaction, we read each other's eye signals, we read the pheromones, the whatever. It's like all of that is just Darwinian if you want, if you want to be kind of materialistic about it, and then maybe that's part of the collective unconscious, or maybe there's more to it, but none of this has to be. It almost helps to think of it in a trippy manner, but it doesn't have to be either. Like there are concrete ways of explaining why gods, and I'm citing another Canadian psychologist here, but like god of anger, right? God of rage, god of the hearth. It's like, what are these things? Well, these are just things that have always been and that are deeper and older than us and that are part of every culture. So sure, call it a god. Like it's a perfect explanation. So yeah, it's interesting that when you're writing or tapping the muse, you're tapping the god, but you're tapping into yourself. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I love. Okay,
let's react to that, and then we can move a different direction if you want. Because I was just thinking, I was looking at my notes for a second. I apologize because I was jotting something down at 4 a.m. when I was ruminating, knowing I was going to come and chat with you today, and I was remembering decades ago when the great Susan Sontag. I was getting my PhD at Boston College, and she did a reading, and there was Q&A, and this is 1980, maybe 1979, and somebody asked her a question about, is the novel dead? And that was a very hip kind of language to speak in graduate school. After all the experimentation of the modern movement and the postmodern movement, has the novel kind of spun out? We've done everything we can with experimenting and different narrators and different ways of telling stories, and I'll never forget her answer. It's been a huge influence on me and the way I write and think. And she said, the novel's not dead as long as the individual continues to evolve, and as long as our sense of the individual keeps evolving, and then the artist finds a way to record that, the novel lives.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
And I think that's what I was thinking about. I think that's how I look at this book, Soda Lake, it's about a new variation of the self, a variation of the myth of the self, a variation of the myth of the self that I'm humbly kind of putting out there. And I don't know, we've seen this variation of the myth of selfhood before, where we have a real person who becomes a narrator, who allows pieces of himself to splinter into these characters who take over the chapters of the book, and they're all pieces of himself. And as these characters are making a journey, they're kind of frittering away at the same time. They're at the very edge of their journey, and they're being distinguished at the same time. And they're all pieces coming out of me that I let kind of come to life that I don't understand. But I think what that's all about, and McQuaid's role in it, is it's bringing a fresh way to understand the quest into the myth of the self. Not for any self-aggrandizing reason, not because I want to talk about me or I'm caught up in myself or I'm a narcissist, but because you're fascinated by reimagining the quest into the myth of the self in this increasingly complicated world, with all its psychological and philosophical implications.
Who is the Greek in the book and why?
The Greek is Heraclitus, the great pre-Socratic philosopher, the one who talked about fire as the chief element, and the one who believed that everything is about a state of becoming. Everything's, you're different now than you were when you sat down a half hour ago, and I'm different now than when you asked that question a minute ago.
Yeah.
And the audience is different now than they were a second ago when they thought about it. Are they going to give us a bathroom break? Heraclitus believed that, he uses the word genitia. It's all about the process of becoming. The last we heard of him was the 69th Olympiad in 504 BC. Believe that the frickin' Greeks had 69 Olympics by 504 BC. And he shows up and he's just berating people there, telling them they're stupid, they don't understand the logos and the mind. And he's so rude, his nickname was the obnoxious one, that they actually threw him out of the Olympics in 504 BC and stoned him as he left. And that's the last we ever heard of Heraclitus. There's no Aristotle without Heraclitus. I mean, he's the whole part of Western intellectual thought that believes that it's about becoming rather than ising, which gets us back to story versus moment. So what I did is I said, you know what? I'm going to write a chapter because in the book, I'm supposed to go to Greece in real life to do sabbatical research on Heraclitus.
Hmm.
But instead, I go to Donegal to look for McQuaid. That's literally what happens. So I figured, shit, Paulie's going to want to know what happens with my Heraclitus thing, so I'll just make it up. And so I make up a 40-page chapter. It's like a dramatic monologue where Heraclitus is talking, and it's everything that happens after he gets kicked out of the Olympics in 504.
Okay.
And he has this journey, and it involves all kinds of experiences. None of that's real per se. It's all me imagining and making it up. And as I said, before, I don't feel like I ever sat there. Now I'll have this happen. Now I'll have that happen. I was always kind of catching up to it. He was like walking ahead of me with his dirty, dusty self and his sandals and water and where is he going to eat? And he eats a hallucinogenic plant and then get into his hallucination. And it was a romp. It was a ride.
So I understand, and I'm going to push against you a little bit here just to see what I get. I understand. Oh, genitalia.
No.
Similar origins.
It's the same word, gender and generation. Yeah, it's all the same root. Yeah.
So what does the L add to it?
On genitalia?
Yeah.
It's the little pieces of you that allow you to continue to becoming into somebody else. And then they become into a human being that comes along, and you have the next generation, and we keep generating and generating. And
I won't play with the phraseology that you just used there. Okay. I get why Heraclitus is there, because he was on your mind, because you were supposed to go to Greece and research Heraclitus. Why does he do what he does? And even the part about him, what did he do after the Olympics? Fine. That's based on the fact that we don't know, and it's an interesting question, right? Whatever happened to this dude? But going from there, why does he do the things he does? How does he...
Well, a lot of it's about the quest, and I know that's an overused term, but I knew there had to be a quest to his travels after he leaves the Olympics. So the piece I latched onto is, we know very few things about his early life, but he actually grew up in what is now Turkey, and he was very rich. And he was an aristocrat basically in the 6th century. His life was set. But he had a young man he was in love with named Hermodorus. And when they're probably in their late teens, Hermodorus gets kicked out of Ephesus, where he's born, because he's causing political trouble. And Heraclitus is really sad. And eventually then Heraclitus leaves, but he leaves to kind of spread this philosophy of the mind and logos and becoming, and that fire is the center of the universe and consumes everything and creates everything, and you can't step in the same river twice, and everything's moving. And so what I did is, I guess what got me going is when he leaves, he gets kicked out of the Olympics, I thought, he's going to look for Hermodorus, who he hasn't seen in 30 years. Where did he go? How can I find him? So that's how I set up where he goes. And he's kind of gathering information on where Hermodorus went, like I'm sort of gathering information on where McQuaid went. And it takes him across Greece, eventually to a beach, and eventually at the end of the chapter, as you know, an island where he's trying to take a boat across to get to this island where he thinks Hermodorus is.
All right. And
so he's going for Hermodorus just like the garage man wants McQuaid, and just like I'm looking for McQuaid for the garage man. I mean, this is some crazy shit.
And you're going across to an island. So back in Ireland now. Are you in Ireland when you're writing this chapter about...
No, I wrote this when I came back.
You're back home.
Yeah.
Okay. Two other pieces I want to dive into. One is the island. Just tell us about the island briefly, if you don't mind.
So... one of the things people don't know, they always think Northern Ireland is the northernmost part.
Yeah.
Northern Ireland is part of the British Empire, and it's actually not. The northernmost part geographically of all of Ireland is actually in the Republic of Ireland. And you have to go through Northern Ireland to get there. Then you come up in this little slice of land, and you get to this very tip. It's the northernmost part of all of Ireland, called Malin Head, M-A-L-I-N. And it's a magnificent place to go because the two oceans are on both sides, and you're at this tip of it all. And across, 5 miles out to sea, is this island called Innistrahall. And what Innistrahall is made of is 60 billion-year-old rock, And it used to be inhabited, but after the 30s, it isn't, so there's nobody there. And in the McQuaid chapter, after making this journey as far as I can, looking after McQuaid and talking to people in real life who tell me where he is, and, I realized...
Hey, I gotta...
shit, he's gone to Innistrahall. That's where he is, this island 5 miles off. And there's no way to get there unless you pay a fisherman. So in the pub that night, I asked about fishermen, and everybody's drinking and singing, and some fisherman's going to meet me at 6 a.m. and take me across to Innistra Hall, and I'm hungover and haven't eaten, and I'm in this boat, and it's really rough and rocky, and he takes me to this island that nobody's on and drops me off, and he says he'll come back to get me at sunset.
Okay, I hesitate to ask, is this real or fiction?
But going to the island?
Yeah.
It's real.
Okay. See, I didn't want to ask because I didn't want to like punch a hole in or deflate the book, but I had to risk it and call you to account. Okay, so this is a thing that you actually did. You actually got somebody to drop you off on this island.
And I have a little canteen of water, and I have a bologna sandwich, and I think a blanket or a jacket or something.
And you've literally asked people at the pub where McQuaid is, and you've come to the conclusion that he's at this island.
And meanwhile, I miss Jeremiah, who's the guy driving the boat. I can see him come in to get me, and I can't get there in time. And he turns around and leaves, and
right.
I'm stuck.
Because you're looking for McQuaid.
I'm stuck on. Yes, I'm stuck on the island for the night.
Yeah.
And I'm out of water, and I don't have a sleeping bag or anything. So I find one of these abandoned houses that people lived in the 30s. And it gets really hallucinogenic then. That's because I don't have food, I don't have water, it's freezing cold, and I'm there for the night. And there's no cell phone coverage. There's nothing.
I'm going to cut it there. Okay. There's another moment that I really, that is stuck in my head, because I used to be one of these people in my early days, and you met enough of my family and friends to appreciate this. You have left the hall where people are drinking and feasting, and you've gone with some young men out to a farm of sorts. I just picture kind of a big barn.
I thought you were making a story up. This sounds familiar. This is from the book.
This is from the book. Yes.
Okay.
Now,
okay.
But it's familiar enough to my young life.
It does sound like your crazy relatives in Nova Scotia.
I get the characters.
Or no, I'm sorry.
Right?
Yeah, Nova Scotia.
No, you're right. Yeah. It's about making something happen. So these guys have you out there. They are driving around. They're shooting their gun at the barn. It's dark. You have to go to the bathroom. You're going in. People are shooting the house. You don't know where people are. Somebody is sleeping. Somebody else is in their car. Come on, I want to go home. No, you can't go home until you drink this. No, you can't go home until you drive. You can't go home until you shoot this. People, it's just this like, you just want something to happen, right? You're so fucking bored, and now you're drunk, and you're just like, let's just go, look for trouble. And all there is a barn and a gun and a car, and a toilet. But if you look hard enough, you're gonna find something.
Yeah.
So what? So there's a part of that I was like, oh man, I see what he's going for. I've never seen this before. There's a part of it where you kind of kill yourself. Not necessarily yourself, but it's the person who you're trying to look out for.
Yeah.
And then you are...
I fired the gun.
You're forced to shoot the gun, and then they told you this guy was somewhere else, but this guy was inside, and... Yeah.
Well, there is a kind of, I don't mean suicide, but I mean there's a kind of process of self-annihilation that we give birth to ourselves, I think, every morning. And at night, the self we were goes to sleep and dies, and a new one comes up. And so the chapter kind of reenacts that. But on my mother's grave, everything in that in that scene is exactly true. And again, Jesus. I allowed myself to get into a chaotic situation. And I'm with my friend Jim, who's working on this chateau, and he becomes McQuaid at times. McQuaid becomes all these different characters. But anyways, we go to into town in this little French village in Normandy called Pontatou, and we go to this Basque restaurant, and Basque restaurants is communal dining, and there's actually real people from the Basque area there, and a lot of Basque people are kind of crazy, just irrational, and you don't know what they're going to do next. So we end up dining with them and dancing with them and drinking with them, and then they say, we're going to go to so-and-so's house and continue the party. But when I get there, it's pouring down rain. And they're standing next to a barn in the rain. And then things progress from there with the guns coming out, and they start shooting at the barn. And then I go to the side to to pee, and he says, "Oh, there's a bathroom in the barn,"
Mm.
and they're trying to get me into the bathroom in the barn because they're going to shoot at me in the bathroom. I mean, all of that is true, and then when I leave, I have to shoot the gun at where I was in the bathroom. And then McQuaid comes along in the shape of Jim and picks me up in a car, and he says, "We have to get the fuck out of here. These people are fucking crazy."
Yeah.
And we go back to the chateau.
Yeah.
All of that is exactly as I remember. I don't have to make it up. But again, I allowed myself to get into a situation like being stuck on the island for the night.
Yeah.
That as I look back, I can't believe I did that.
Yeah. And this is a good...
At 23.
This almost ties us back to... Sorry, at 23. What's that?
That's how old I was when that episode happened.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. But in the book, I'm going back at age like 60 to look for McQuaid.
Okay.
And when I go to Pontet 2, it goes back and forth in time between...
Got it.
2013 and
1977.
Yeah,
Okay. I mean, so I didn't follow that. I guess I just picture you. In a sense, it doesn't matter.
I'm going into McQuaid, and he's going into my memories and past.
Yeah.
That's why that chapter is the penultimate chapter, because he's going into my past back in 1977.
So to me, there's these... Oh, God, who is this?
The poor audience is going to think this is the strangest book.
Who is this painter? Goya, who did the pictures of hell and like all the gross, decapitation and fornication and just is...
He's groaning, dying, miserable, elongated, exactly. You know what they are? They're
grotesque.
That's the word I was thinking of.
Grotesque.
They're grotesque. They're exaggerated. Yeah.
That's how I felt about that scene. Was like, yeah, I know this. This is a version of hell. The alcohol has gone.
That's really good.
Sour in your stomach.
That's
and
really good.
You just feel.
That's really
tense
good.
and angry.
I didn't even see that.
And scared, and like, fuck it all at the same time.
And there's a discussion among some of them being demons.
Yeah. Okay.
Remember, there's a demon section.
Yeah.
See, I didn't even pick up on any of that.
Okay.
I love the word grotesque, though, because it goes back to cave painting, which caves were called grottos.
Okay.
And the etchings on the ancient grotto walls, thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, 12,000 BC, are the first human drawings we have.
Right.
And we call them eventually grotesque because the people who drew them in 12,000 BC weren't very good, so they're exaggerated.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay. I always picture those as hunting.
But that's a really interesting take on that it's kind of a hell that's evolving, unleashing, and I'm losing control of.
Because what are you doing? You're there. It's late. It's like you've pushed a good thing too far. There was the feast, there was the fun, there was the dancing, there was the singing.
Well done.
And then you went to the fucking after party. You just had to go to the after party.
Well, I didn't have much choice. They said come to so-and-so's barn with us. We have some liquor you want to try. We want you to try.
Oh, yeah, no choice. No choice in the matter.
A mixture of cognac and wine.
Yeah.
Literally mixed together.
Yeah. It's so familiar to me. And it's always, like, I don't know how many times I wound up at somebody's apartment or somebody's field or somebody's, middle of the woods.
I was thinking you and your boyhood in
campfires
in Nova Scotia. They must have had, especially with all your crazy cousins. Your cousins are not that far away from the characters, the Basque figures in that chapter.
I suppose they're good humans, and they've come through it. But yeah, there's some dodgy shit. So, but you see, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but there's an element of it that is, it's like you couldn't stop. When the party stopped, you had to go keep it going, and then everything turns sickly. And even when you're like, it's just that place and that hour of the night when like the villains are
and
out
you have no control and you can't necessarily leave.
Yeah, and you're not. It's not your world anymore. You're not in Kansas anymore. There's some other presence or presences,
and you have no guarantee you're going to be safe and okay.
And they don't have your best interest at heart. Shoot the gun, have a drink, and then in the morning, you're just fucked, and you've done something terrible, and like you've lost a limb or a tooth. It's like something terrible has happened, and you're just like, oh my God, like I don't know, why do we go there? It's kind of what I'm getting at. I don't know why I went there when I was
I don't think I would do that now at my present state of life. But I think at 23 we have such bravado about us. I can see it my college students I teach, and the way they ride their skateboards and their scooters and the way they live, and they don't think they're going to get sick and they don't think shit's going to happen to them. There's that bravado that comes at that early age. You don't really know shit, but you think you do, and you get yourself into situations. Fortunately, I let that happen enough times that I have this reservoir of these precarious moments, demonic-like moments. I really like you bringing in the demonic, because that's Coleridge's word for the journey we make into the source of creativity.
So it is to the demonic.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And Coleridge's great poem, which we've talked about, Kubla Khan. It's the demonic that opens up. Everything's controlled. I'm going to build this beautiful palace, and I'm going to have these 5 acres, and everything's great, and it's going to be beautiful. And it's really about this ancient Chinese emperor who's going to do this, Kubla Khan. And then the unexpected happens, and suddenly this gulf opens up, this trench opens up, and he falls into it. And as he's falling into his id, he's falling into his subconscious, he's falling into the dream self. But Coleridge always uses the word demonic journey. There's fairy elves. It's a place of loss of control. And I think he's right with that.
And why? And like, I know this imagery, right? And I know some people would say, well, you have to, it's a process of civilizing that, you're inside your castle and you have to go outside the castle and conquer more lands, and then you expand your castle, or you expand your realm, you expand your paradise, you expand your farm. Or there's the tree, that the roots reach down into hell so that the branches can reach up into heaven.
I think he's saying, if you really want to know the answer, where does creativity come from? How do we make great art? What's the source of it? How do we end up with, Picasso's Guernica or Beethoven's late quartets? I think what Coleridge is saying is you have to allow yourself to go to a dangerous place, into this demonic, and, it's not safe, and it's also, you're going to the source of art that cannot be censored or controlled. And people always fear that. They want to censor, they want to control art. And I think what Coleridge is saying, we're going into a place, there is no censorship, there is no control, and you might find some really disturbing, psychosexual, who knows what, once you go into that realm. But that's the source of creativity. This, as he sees it, this erupting wild geyser that puts out these huge, unshaped fragments that later can be turned into art and poetry, because we get a hold of it. Art is about the process of giving form to chaos.
I guess, yeah. God, like I get what we're going for, or okay. Here's the problem. My left brain has a way of thinking about this, where it is that act of civilizing it, or of finding something there and turning it into something good, or allowing your boundaries to be pushed, out of your realm of comfort or whatever. But my personal felt experience of hell in that sense, and I'm thinking of these childhood experiences that resonated with your Normandy story. There's nothing good there. Like, there's nothing. It's just wasteful. Like, it's not like a trek into. Like, I've been lost in the woods plenty of times. Where you think you're done for. Winter in Canada, or utterly off the map in New Zealand or Africa, and it's like. It's not the same feeling. Like, it's not demonic. It's just scary in its nature. But there's no, like, I feel those, like.
But the difference is, and just so the audience know how, I don't like to use the word awesome, but Johnny did something really awesome. He rode a bicycle from Cairo to Johannesburg, which I think is 9,000 miles across 7 months. The whole length of Africa.
Sure. Yeah.
But see, the difference is, and I'll always be in awe of that. And actually, at his wedding, when I found out they had done that and he hadn't told me, I pushed him up against the wall and I said, "Why didn't you tell me you biked the length of Africa?" And Johnny says, and he's got his tuxedo on. He just got married, And he says, "I have layers." But the difference is, you said to yourself, "I'm going to go on this bike trip for 7 months. I'm going to bike the length of Africa. I know it's going to be dangerous, hairy, precarious." Yeah. I didn't say, "I'm going to go to this Basque restaurant and such." I just went to this Basque restaurant. I was just looking for a place to have dinner.
Yeah.
That's the difference. between consciously putting yourself in a place where you say, well, there's really no good here. It's just a teleological quest to get from Cairo to Johannesburg and see if I can do it, and also do it being a diabetic. That's different than, oh shit, now I'm in a place I don't know if I can get out of this okay. And I certainly didn't say at the time, I want to hold on to this moment. I mean, I didn't even think about the moment then.
Right.
Or the story.
Right. But why is that where creativity comes from? It's just to throw another impossible question at you. Like, what's there?
What's the there you're talking about?
Drinking at a barn in the rain, shooting a gun at a toilet. Like,
yeah, but I didn't know at the time that it had anything to do with creativity.
But can you tell me why? Again, this demonic, like, why does it have to come from the demonic, or why does it come from the demonic?
That's what I believe, yeah. I don't think demonic is, I think we're using it in a different way, or at least I am. I don't think we necessarily mean the devil with a tail is going to take you to hell and you're going to do dirty, bad things.
Right.
I think of the demonic as going into, it gets back to the word paranoid I use in the Paranoia and Contentment book. It's just making a dangerous journey where you can't control contentment and security. You don't know where it's going. And you're allowing yourself to go, and you don't know what the gain's going to be. But you know this dangerous journey is somehow what you want to do.
Dante's Inferno.
That's how I mean demonic.
Okay. I'm still not satisfied.
Okay.
Dante's Inferno, you go down the levels of hell, and it's like the betrayers are like at the almost, deepest level of it, right, because they've,
that's right,
said one thing, done another. It's like, you don't want to go there. You don't want to do, I mean, especially in the life that I'm living right now, where I'm a business person and I have a family and all that. It's like, just stay away from all that. Don't touch it. Like, right, it's just, there's nothing good down there. And yet I feel like there's something to this idea that, creativity comes from there to some extent.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
I don't think great art or great creativity comes from a place of comfort and control. I mean, it gets back to where we were an hour ago. Happiness, all happy families are alike.
Yeah.
I mean, how many really happy, great artists, writers, thinkers, painters do you know? I mean, how many great stories are written about a happy marriage? No.
Right.
The serpent has to come in. Chaos has to come in. Adultery has to come in. Something has to come in.
Right.
We understand hell because we all live in a form of hell. Dante's Paradiso is boring. I mean, I advise everybody to read the Inferno, and Purgatorio is really good too. The Paradiso is boring because he doesn't know how to imagine a place of happiness. He talks about a pin of light going through the center of a rose, and A, it's boring, B, I don't want to go there.
Yeah, Aldous Huxley wrote a book called Island, counterpoint to Brave New World, and I liked Island, but it's more of a recipe.
Yeah.
And Brave New World is more about there's human nature laid bare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went back to Ireland after McQuaid was 2000. I'm back in 2018, as you know, because I had a writer's retreat at the Heinrich Böll House on Achill Island, which is a really remote island off the west of Ireland. And I had to live alone in this house without Wi-Fi and connections and radio. And I was there for 3 weeks. And, alone in that house, no cell, no radio, no Wi-Fi. And I thought, what am I doing? I'm a social extrovert. I love to have my social life, and then I have my study in the morning or late at night, and I do some writing. I don't need to go to a remote island and live alone in this house to write. This is not me. This is a mistake. I really fucked this up. And the more I started thinking that, the more I started getting close to like a nervous breakdown at times. And of course, I'm trying to write the last chapter of Soda Lake, which is called Achill Island. And I'm trying to write the chapter based on what's happening while I'm there to keep true to the whole autobiographical thing. And I'm going back to your question of why go there. I didn't intend it. But as the first week went by, I found myself talking to myself out loud, which I never do, yelling out from McQuaid as if he was a real person. that's really crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling I was slipping to the edges of my controlled consciousness. And if you read the chapter, I keep thinking, thank God my sister's coming in 2 weeks. She'll save me. And so that was, that's me at, I don't know, if I was 64 or 63. And once again, I had put myself in a place of danger and slippage out of the self that I didn't think I would anymore. And I'm not kidding you. I mean, I was close to madness.
Yeah.
And thank God my sister did show up, and thank God I had to go do a reading.
Yeah.
But coming back from the pubs and talking to McQuaid and talking to myself and screaming and seeing my reflection in a window, and then going to the reflection in the window, looking out at myself. I mean, this is stuff you have to let yourself go, but when you do, you're not really enjoying it, and you didn't really ask for it, and you didn't plan it.
So why do it?
I didn't know that was going to go that way.
Yeah.
I thought, I have the Heinrich Boll Award. I'm going to go live in this famous Nobel Prize-winning German writer's retreat house in Ackle Island. This is going to be really cool. Until I got there and said, shit, I don't work this way. I don't want to be alone.
You decided to go crazy instead.
But I recorded it, thank God. I recorded it. That's a good line, Johnny. I was going to write something good, but I decided to go crazy instead. Well, my friend, you have one final question?
Yeah, we're a good few minutes in here. Bring me back to dancing in the evenings. Having a nice night out with some friends, some drinks, maybe a gummy, they're legal now. And then the crack is good. You're having a lovely evening.
Right.
This is something as a somebody with much less social experience than you, I would have had less social experience than you if you were my age or half my age. But this is something I notice about you and your company in the evenings is like you're good at facilitating engagement, right? Getting people to have fun, laugh, get on with each other, tease each other, tell stories, I don't know, man. Like my question is something like, how do you do it? How do you get good at it? Again, this is very teleological. Or maybe why do it? I don't quite know how to ask these things, right? Because in a way, I have to ask them in a language process kind of manner. But what I'm trying to get at is the unsayable, the unprocessable, right?
The ineffable.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Let's F it. Yeah.
It's interesting, your question, you're being very intuitive here, because one of the ways I saved myself from slipping into madness in that island, in that house, after coming back from the pubs and talking to him and screaming at him and talking to myself, is I had a little music box my daughter gave me, and I would put on music and I would dance alone in this cottage, like 1 a.m. And dancing was a way to keep the madness at bay in a way. And all madness really is you go to a place you can't get back from. We want to go to this place that's dangerous and I want to see something, but I want to be able to get back. And sometimes we blow it and we don't know if we're going to get back. But that was a turning point in terms of dancing and letting go. And then when I came back, and I have a new life in the last couple of years, as you know, being divorced and moving on with my life. And but that dancing in that cottage in Ackle in 2018 is now part of my life. And dancing, as we did last night at 1 a.m. to loud music, is a way of, and I can do it. I'm lucky. I mean, I have a job where I don't teach till noon. I mean, a lot of this is privilege, I guess, that I can do this. But it's all about finding ways to let go of the superego and let go of the controls. Dancing is a way to get to that inner volcano, to get to the demonic. You're uncensored. You're moving your body. You're in the music. You're in the moment. It might be a story, but it's all about letting go, which sounds easy. Just let yourself go. But
what's on the music box?
Well, last night it was Dave Mason, and then what else did we dance? So Eric Clapton. She picked a couple things. We take turns. We pick songs, and
What was
it goes on for hours.
What,
It goes on for hours. You pick a song, and I'll pick a song. No, it's your
We've
pick.
got the webcam up on your neighbors.
Yeah, we should have.
can
You should
watch
do
it,
that.
yeah.
You should do that. You came over one time for dinner
Yeah,
with Morgan and with Huxley,
yeah.
and you remember the other night we didn't let you go.
Until we had a few dances.
We
I loved it.
blasted. I can still remember the song. It was a kind of a really cool rap song. It was what's her name singing New York, New York with the rapper.
Oh, yeah. Jay-Z and...
Yes,
Yeah.
the great female singer, jazz singer. And I remember you and Morgan, and she had Huxley, swinging Huxley around.
Yeah.
And for 7 or 8 minutes before you guys left, and granted, your real life is there. You got to get home, get Huxley to bed. That's all real. Amanda and I did not have that. But you guys got into the Dionysic frenzy.
For a moment,
the Dionysic frenzy. And, maybe those are ancient Greek polarities that Nietzsche first pointed out, but we're in between the Apollonian, which is about reason, light, control, order, processing, and the Dionysian, which is about passion, wine, drinking, dance, erotic, chaos, irrationality.
Reckless abandon.
And, the Greeks believed, that's why if you go to Delphi, there's 2 mountains there, one sacred to Dionysus, one sacred to Apollo, because the Greeks really believe you have to embrace both. Not in the sense of happy medium. There's no happy medium. You embrace both in a kind of oscillating back and forth, and if you don't, it's a kind of a lie about who you are. And I think later on, Euripides gets that. The reason Athens fell is Athens thought it could be purely Apollonian, control, light, order, and forgot about the truth of the Dionysian.
Have we gotten Apollonian these days?
I think you've gotten
I've gotten Apollonian.
more Apollonian, and I've become, because my daughter's 22 and away, and I'm on my own again, and have a free life with Amanda and my friends, and I become more Dionysian because I can do it, because I have the situation, the privilege, and the freedom now to do that.
That's something to look forward to.
Yeah.
With the responsibility.
But I think it's important that it's not a happy medium. There are dances of extremes that you move in, and God knows I embrace the Apollonian. I did it to prepare for this talk today, and to go to my class and order my thoughts and let the house run and do all the things you need to do to keep things going.
But then you have to go
run
around your neighborhood naked at night.
You have to respect the Dionysian, because you repress it too long, and then it comes out in ways that does hurt you, I think, or does damage you, or does destruction.
Yeah. I think of the Germans and their great nightclubs and their great bar scene, and it's crazy.
Especially in Berlin.
Yeah, exactly. That's the last place I was.
Yeah.
And
that's so interesting. One of the songs we were dancing to last night was Leonard Cohen's First I'll Take Manhattan.
Oh yeah.
Then we'll take Berlin.
Yeah.
That was one of the songs. Wow.
What you don't remember? There's a female jazz singer that we were listening to that dinner at your house. Oh God, she's got
Nora Jones.
It was Nora Jones. Yeah. That was excellent. That really set the mood.
Yeah. Look how much music. That was a great dinner party.
Yeah.
Look how much music took us through a journey that night.
Yeah.
Whether it was Coltrane or Nora Jones, or some rap music or something.
And then it all titrates in the music, little alcohol, nice food.
Nobody got drunk. Nobody drank too much.
No, we were all fine. Nice furniture, nice setting,
right.
Nice night, nice breeze, nice music. Like it's all so, like you wouldn't think that you need it, but it all eases you into, like honestly letting go of the Apollonian or the procedural or the left brain.
And it's interesting that it happens. This is a really good point you're making. I'm just highlighting it for you. But as you say it, now I'm seeing it. It was all really a journey into an aesthetic journey, right?
Yeah.
Because it was all about people being beautiful in their own way, the beauty of food, the beauty of a beautiful wooden floor, the beauty of music, the beauty of flowers, the beauty of company, the beauty of ideas, the beauty of discussion. In many ways, this isn't just like a sybaritic journey into the hedonism. It's not.
Right.
It's an aesthetic journey into art and beauty on multiple levels. And I think it's not just a senseless kind of letting go. It's a letting go that's about a journey.
It strikes me that when we're in those demonic situations, again, burn, pouring rain, alcohol turning sour in your stomach, guns, is there also are you also like, it's like you're cast out of the Apollonian in a totally different way.
Yeah.
So there's one way to like ease yourself.
No, that's good.
And then there's another way to just,
yeah.
Get tossed into the pit. And
Right.
maybe there's different kinds of...
And at the end, I see this car drive up, and I think it's McQuaid, my own personal God, who's coming to save me. It's really my friend Jim, who looks like McQuaid, but I don't know what McQuaid looks like. But I get in that car, and I'm safe, whether I deserved it or not.
That's good. I think that's a good place to cut it.
Okay, thank you, my friend. We'll do
Thank
it again.
you. I look forward to it.
Okay.